Well, is the light and sound okay so far?
Yeah, sounds good. We're good.
Okay.
What's up,
Right.
everybody? How we doing today? I am bringing on Zane Griggs from Zane Griggs Fitness. Zane, we met less than a month ago, about a month ago in Austin.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like I didn't think about this till afterwards, but it was like the co-authors Barry Club. Like everybody that's written a book with Dr. Barry was at this thing at his house having barbecue. You, me, Judy, Kim, like we were all there. It was kind of
I didn't realize that at
cool to
all.
kind of see all that net is becoming. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So Judy wrote the Carnivore Cure. He helped her with that or had a part in that. I know he's a forward or co-author there. The Kim Howerton, the ketonist, they did a blood work book, and then
That
he
one I'm
wrote the
aware of.
forward and helped me with my book a little bit. And then you
Oh,
got your
gotcha.
book that just came out.
That's
So
right.
what is your book?
Oh, I
Your
didn't
book is
realize.
about
Well,
being old and in shape, right?
yeah, that pretty much sums it up. No, it's called Kicking Ass After 50. Happen to have one next to me. Kicking
Happens.
Ass After 50. Yeah, I happen to just have one within reach everywhere I go now. But it's a guide to optimal health for men 50 and over. It's just, and for men, I mean, it's all, diet, sleep, and exercise, pretty much the three big ones you want to get in line.
Yeah.
So that applies to everybody, but we just wrote it in a very direct, no nonsense kind of guy to guy talk. So if we say for men, and we have a chapter about testosterone, optimizing that, which, that could, again, you could apply that across the board, just change some terms. But it's really the basics, of sleep, exercise, and nutrition.
Now, why did
in a
you
real
choose that
straightforward
topic?
way.
Like, why is that the thing that you're passionate about that you felt like you needed to write a book about?
Well, I'm 52,
Okay.
and Ken's 54, and it was just something that we felt wasn't being addressed. There's a lot of women who have books, or a lot of books being written specifically for women, especially as you get older. Around, I've made a joke about it. You have keto for women, you've got carnivore for women, you've got fasting for women, you've probably got shoveling snow in Hawaii for women if you really look hard enough.
Yeah.
But we wanted to address something we could speak like guy to guy, be really straightforward, no underhand pitching. We don't, be real direct, and just talk to the guy who is just feeling that he gets to middle age, late 40s, 50. Things start to change with your health. And if you're not paying attention, if you're not managing it, then you start paying for the sins of your 30s and 40s and your 50s. You really 100%. Do.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, a lot of these guys want to keep killing it. They want to keep in their careers, with their family. Maybe they want to start, doing more of the things they didn't have time to do or couldn't afford to do back when they were still building their career. But like a lot of my clients, they want to keep killing it in their career. And the last thing they need is a health issue to take them out of the game.
Right.
And so this is like, man, if you want to keep doing what you want to do, you got all this experience and wisdom and influence, and that you don't want to go to waste because you got taken out because you could have made better health choices. Right. You could have made better lifestyle choices. You don't want something self-inflicted to take you out if you can prevent it. So like, let's shore up some of these things. It's real. I mean, we explain why it works in simple terms, but then give them real simple steps to start implementing these things that are not like they have to take on a part-time job to turn their fitness upside down. It's like, no, you can make this work with your life with understanding and really making some simple changes. And it doesn't interfere with your career. Right. In fact, it'll make it better because you're going to have more energy. You're going to perform better, and you'll be able to keep going.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing that I try to impress on people is that most of the time, the things that you're worried about getting in the way are actually the reason why you should be doing something.
Right.
It's like, oh, I don't have any time. Well, then you need this. You need to prioritize. You need to improve your time management. You need to focus on this and reprioritize what's important. Because if you don't think you have time now, wait until you are sick. Wait until you are hurt. Wait until you can't to do something. Then you can be like, oh, well, I should have taken time. So it's going to be one or the other. You're going to spend the time. You're going to spend the money. You're going to spend the effort. You got to prioritize how long do you want to maintain and how well do you want to perform for that period of time.
Absolutely. And these guys are neglecting. I mean, they spend a lot of money on things and they're really they're high dollar people. They cost a lot to be with their time is worth a lot. But they'll send an assistant to go get their lunch for whatever the assistant's picking up on the way back. They're going to, you know what I mean? So they got to eat whatever their assistant grabs on the way back, who's some 25, 30-year-old who's just trying to get by. He's going to grab something because he doesn't, you know, but you're a 50, 55, 60-year-old at the top of your career. You have the money to buy whatever food you want, but you're going to wait. You're going to let the assistant spend 10 or 12 bucks to bring you some lunch back on something that you really shouldn't be eating. Why would you have such an out of balance lifestyle? Why would you treat yourself that way when you're supposed to be a high performer?
Right.
You
it's
know,
similar. I'm listening to you talk, and I'm seeing corollaries. I work with a lot of women, and one of the biggest struggles that I see in my clients is the wanting to give and take care of everyone else,
right,
instead of themselves. And I think for guys, it's wanting to perform at the cost of themselves, right? It's job comes first, performance comes first, career comes first, these types of things. It's a very similar result, putting energy into something other than yourself, but just different reasoning.
Absolutely. Yeah, I work with a lot of women the same. They're kind of coming out of that. They might still have some kids at home, but even if they have college kids, it's constantly giving. They're trying to let them, you know, keep that connection. But they end up being the last person they take care of, you know. So absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. So how did you get started in fitness? So you've been around for a while, more than just a little while. You've been doing fitness coaching kind of for a couple of years here and there, something like that.
25 or so. Yeah. 25 years. It's been a while. 98. That's before we had the internet and blogs and all the things we had to connect with each other back then. Yeah. And it was real trial and error back then. It was like, read a book and try something, and then you hear about somebody else trying something, and you know, you just kind of, it was a lot of trial and error. And I learned a lot that way to begin with, and made a lot of mistakes, but I mean, that's how you learn. But yeah, 25 years.
Wow. And what have you done in that time? Mostly you've done everything. Group. I mean, you've been a personal trainer, you've been a coach, you've been a group instructor, like you've done everything pretty much, right?
Yeah, I've done a little group. It didn't really appeal to me, but I played with it. I was mostly a one-on-one kind of trainer. And then over the last, going into homes these days, or with people remotely and that kind of thing, like Zoom and remote coaching with accountability and strategy and helping people stay focused on changing habits and those kind of things. So with primarily with metabolic disease and weight loss, addressing diet, addressing like the things we talk about, sleep, just creating accountability is what a lot of times it's about. Help people change their habits and their perspective and how they feel about themselves. Okay. But yeah, that's been my focus for really the entire 2.5 decades that I've been in it, crazy. But always trying to learn. I mean, I just realized that the tools I had to start with, I realized the information I had to start with was not super accurate with nutrition. And that's where the learning really came in, is digging into that, like what tools really work, what, nutrition advice do I want to give my clients? Have I walked that out myself? Am I, can I say it from experience? So that was a big part of, I'd say, the learning curve was, really want to make sure what I told people was effective.
Yeah. Right. That's just going to say, like, looking at what you're telling people, what you're doing for yourself, and being like, well, I get why it's hard for people because this sucks. And then you find a better way. You try something else. And you're like, hey, wait a second. This is seeming different from me. Let me try it with my client. And they're like, oh, this is awesome. I love it. And like, okay, let's try it with another client. And, I hear people that have been doing this for 20, 30 years, big names, and they get that clout enough where they can say, or that personality, that fame, where they get, they go on YouTube or they go on social media and they're like, science doesn't mean anything, do what works. And people listen to them when they say that. But when I talk to people and I'm like, you know what, I understand everything that you've been taught, but this is what works. They kind of look at me like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. It's like, I've been doing this for a while, guys. I figured out what works and what doesn't work. And let's try this and just see what happens. and it usually works out for them.
Sure. Well, sure, but it's really hard to fight the mainstream. It's hard to fight their what their doctors tell them, or their nurse or the nutritionist
Right.
is telling them, which many times you're completely, countering what they've been told, regardless of the fact their doctor or nurse hasn't had any significant nutrition training. What they had was completely off. It was just what it was bought and paid for by processed food companies. And so getting that credibility and that trust with them can take some time.
Time. Yeah. So you've been doing this for about 25 years. Did you you started young. You went right out of college, basically right into fitness.
I was in my late 20s. It was one of those things where I was my early 20s. I was kind of wandering a bit, but I found that I was still experimenting. I was really into thinking about longevity at that point. I don't know why in my 20s I started thinking about longevity and what would be the ideal diet for living longer, but it was just a personal curiosity. And so I experimented with all sorts of stuff. I did juice fasting back then. I did vegetarian, believe it or not, for a few years. I mean, it's just playing with things that I thought, hey, well, I've read this book or someone else has tried this. Let's see if I can make this work. And so that was a lot of my experimenting through my 20s. To really dig in there. And I found once I was asking trainers like 20 questions every time I met one. So I thought, you know what, I think this is the direction I want to go in with my life. Someone should have warned me.
It's a rough road to haul, isn't it? Getting started as a trainer takes a long time to build up that credibility, that network, that the people that buy into what you're doing. Like it's not an easy thing. How long did it take for you to kind of go from, okay, I'm going to do this personal training thing to I can actually pay my bills?
That took a while. Boy, I would say, because I had side hustles when I started, I was always doing something else on the side. You have to. Yeah. I think before I could really depend on it, it was probably 8 years in, but I mean, I had a family. I've got 4 kids and 3 of them are in their 20s. So we're talking, I was in the mix of it when I was getting all this going. So, to really get that network built at a rate where you can, charge enough to really make it worth your while. That took some time. And it was building the network and building. I think also there's a little bit of that internal confidence in the fact that what you're telling people is really going to help them.
100%.
Not just cognitive dissonance where you're just kind of like, oh, well, this will work. This is good because that's what you have to tell them, but to really feel like I've got my hands on 80%, if it's not at least 80% truth, and I'm still learning, but it's enough to get this person from A to B and successfully. And I don't feel like they're going to see,
and maybe even to see, right?
Maybe even to see.
Maybe even to see. Yeah. That trusting in your own knowledge takes time. The imposter syndrome creeps in. You start wondering, and the minute something happens with a client that you weren't expecting, you're like, oh crap, what did I do?
Right.
You're like, okay, now what? And you start freaking out a little bit. And it takes some time till you have enough of those things happen that you know what to expect. When you can see things coming around the corner so that they may be surprised, but you're not surprised as much anymore. And you have a solution. You kind of know what to expect. That's fantastic. So you started as a personal trainer. What is your progression in understanding fitness? And how do you look at fitness now compared to how you looked at it when you first started? I know my view has changed a lot.
Yes. Oh yeah. It's definitely view. And most of my views that have changed have been around nutrition side of it, where I really was snowballing there. But even with fitness in general, with movement, and I think there's been several aspects that have changed in how I train people who, depending on their goals, but a much safer trainer 10 years in than I was when I started. Much safer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not trying to get everybody to lift the way I do, or the way I did then. you really have to learn to accommodate different injuries, different body types, people who are just not fit. You got to learn not to kill them, right? Not to overdo it, overtrain them, help them move in ways that makes them feel empowered and not defeated.
Oh, that's
And
amazing. That's awesome.
You know what I mean? I mean, like make them feel like they're moving, they're progressing, in a way that makes sense for them, and that gets them to their goal. With nutrition, I mean, it was starting off. I mean, I felt clueless because I could see the tools I've been given weren't working. In 2002, my wife had her third child, and she was having trouble getting the weight off, and she started playing with the Atkins diet. I'm like, sure. Give it a shot. Let's try the Atkins diet. Go for it. Which is cutting. It was the beginning of the, in the 90s, early 2000s, cut back the carbs. You have maybe some fruit here and there, but mostly it's just meat and fat. And it worked, lo and behold. Imagine that. All my peers, it's a fad diet. Oh, you need carbs to survive. They thought I was crazy. Or dangerous. And I'm like, but it's working. I don't care what you think. It's working. And so showing this to my client, showing this to my clients and helping them get it, implement this even on some scale. And there were results and satiety and, weight loss and just feeling better. And so I didn't know, everything then, but I knew that, whoa, there's a lever here that we can pull to help the body burn fat more effectively. And from there, I got into 2010 intermittent fasting. Started intermittent fasting quite a bit, and then playing with myself, and then starting helping clients. Well, let's just push, let's condense your meal window a little bit, and allow your body to burn fat. And I realized, help them walk through that as it fit for their schedule, but just giving them yet another tool to use, another lever to help their body get acclimated in burning fat more effectively rather than storing it all the time. And so using those two tools together with like circuit training with a lot of people, just keeping them moving, doesn't have to be real heavy, but just help them move and turn energy over and get their blood moving and feeling better and get their heart rate up in the time I had with them. It might be the only exercise they get that week. And so trying to combine, a little bit of, raising their heart rate, not focusing so much on the top end of their strength, but just like, let's move some blood. Let's get some lactic acid going. Let's get a little bit of fatigue, a little bit of everything. And then really realized how important sleep was. And the third component that I hadn't really thought about for several years, where there's exercise, and many of us didn't. We didn't realize how important. But to include sleep in the impact it has on our hormones, or metabolic hormones, especially about hunger cravings, insulin. Was for a long time in fitness the forgotten element, the forgotten tool, component of our health, because we're not conscious when we're doing it, right?
That's interesting. I never thought about that. That we don't think about it because we're not thinking, like we're out that time. So we're not. Yeah, that's interesting.
We don't place weight in it, and we didn't know what we could do to change it.
It is literally probably the most important aspect of the two. Like, I don't care how well your fitness program is. I don't care how well your nutrition is. If you're not getting good sleep on a regular basis, it's like you're wasting your time doing the other things. I mean, that's a little hyperbole, but it's pretty close.
You're probably going to crash at some point. At some point, it's like things are going to come. The failure rate for the other two is higher if you're neglecting sleep, because you're impacting your hormones, your energy level, your mood, your ability to sustain, have a sustainable lifestyle. Really is impacted by sleep, the quality of sleep. And so I think that was the progression where, refining as I went, trying to stay curious, trying not to feel like I had arrived, and helping people really look at their whole lifestyle. When many times they come to you and they just want you to put them through a workout. No, I don't want to talk about nutrition. I don't want to talk about diet yet. I don't want to talk, you probably heard that. And it's like, okay, but the effectiveness of what we're doing here is reliant on your ability to change these other components for the better. So if we're working out and I'm just babysitting you through some movements, what kind of results are you expecting? You know, it's like, how do you expect that to help you? Well, yes, you will get some benefit in the way you move, and you might feel better
Sure.
after the workout. But if you're looking for weight loss, if you're looking for a change in your metabolic health, it's going to be impaired if you can't address these issues. And
absolutely. And it's right now, because of the space being mostly in the keto carnivore space right now.
yeah,
I focus on fitness, and I'm trying to be a voice in the world. I feel like I'm a voice in the wilderness sometimes when we talk about the importance of exercise, fitness, moving your body, metabolic health when it comes to quality of life. It's not always just about weight loss, and it's not just nutrition. You need more than nutrition.
correct.
And I did a video recently on my YouTube channel, on this channel, is like, don't ask me about macros. You can ask me macros. I have a book. I wrote a book that's got a whole section on how to figure out what your macros are. That's the easy stuff.
Mm.
I can give you a set of numbers all day long. Sustaining your lifestyle and doing something that's actually going to help you improve your quality of life for the rest of your life, that's where you need a coach, because there's a lot more to it than macros.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, macros you can get, like you said, from a download.
Yeah.
Like, okay, right. I can do that in an app. Plug it in the app. Here you go. It's that simple.
Yep.
It's not the same as making sure your quality of sleep is intact for at least most of the time, as much as you can. Yeah. And for paying attention to, how you move, how much you're moving, not overtraining, especially as you age, but at the same time, getting a spectrum of different types of exercise, that fit, that you will sustain.
Absolutely. And it's like you said, right? It's more habit change than anything else. Mm-hmm. All the fitness, even the sleep is easy. You're sleeping. I love to sleep. I can sleep all day long if I could, I would. But developing a habit where I make the time to do the sleep, developing a habit where I make the time to prep my food, where I make, it's the habit that allows all these other things to happen. So there's a lot more habit development and behavior change in coaching than I think a lot of people realize. They think I'm getting a coach to give me a workout. I'm getting a coach to push me. I'm getting a coach for accountability. It's like, it's really none of that. Our job for most of what we do is to help you develop good habits.
Right. Get the strategy in place and put those habits into your life. Yeah. I've gotten to the point where if I'm having to drag someone through what we're doing, I really don't want to work with them. Yeah. If someone says, I need the guy who's going to, pull me out of bed and cuss me out if I don't make it to that, I'm like,
nope.
Find somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, when people are looking for that, because I get that a lot from the fitness side, but I get a lot. That's where the mentality for people joining all these challenges and 75 hard and doing all these things, right? They're so reliant on this external source of energy because they don't have their own desire to do it. Right. And that's really what people need to understand is, motivation by definition means whether you want to do something or not. Mm-hmm. That's what it means. Motivation is the desire to do something. So you can't get that from somewhere else. If you're getting the energy from some artificial accountability or something that someone else is setting an expectation on you that you don't want to set for yourself, that's what it is. I don't want to set this expectation for myself, so I'm going to tell someone else I'm going to do something so that they have an expectation. Now I feel like I owe them to show up. I'm not showing up for me. I'm showing up for them. And that is not at all sustainable.
No.
Yeah.
And I try to find those things if someone's struggling, like what's the motivator that's bigger than you and your habits that's going to get you to do these things? Like, what is it, like with a lot of guys, their career or family or, whatever it is that's going to the desired result, like what's their why, so to speak, of doing it. Because you and I, we're nerds, we're geeks. We're going to look at this stuff. We see something works. We understand the mechanism. That's a known to motivate. Oh, I want to do this because it goes through this pathway and it comes into the Krebs cycle and then comes out and it's like, okay, that's great for us. That motivates us. We could geek out on it. But your average person out there, that doesn't motivate them to do anything extra or different, or at least especially in a tough spot. You can explain it to them, but when they get in a point where they're just feeling unmotivated, weak, tired, stressed out, sad, name any emotion,
pretty much
that's where they're like, whoop. And they need to have that goal, that why, that thing that is motivating them to do that, that's bigger than those moments. It's bigger than their habits.
100%.
It's bigger. And so I'll definitely, try to help find that, remind them of it, because that's encouragement.
Yeah.
And that's like, because there's moments of tiredness, there's moments of weakness, there's moments of just discouragement. But if they're coming to it from the beginning with like, they don't know what that is. They don't have that. And it's not big enough for them to give up these really self-defeating habits, very self-destructive habits.
Yep.
Then I hate to say that they're not ready, but they're not ready.
Yeah, there are plenty of people that are not ready. And when we talk about behavior change, there's the ready, willing, and able. The concept of, are you ready to do something? Yes, I'm ready to do something. Are you willing to do something? They're not the same thing. They're two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
And then, are you able to do it? Is it something that you're physically able to implement in your life? If those things aren't there, then it doesn't matter how much we want it for them. And I think that's understated in many communications that we have with clients, and just in general in the field. I don't think people realize, when it comes to good coaches and good trainers, how much we want them to succeed.
Yeah.
Like I'm getting paid by someone to help them, but my desire for them to succeed, they're not paying me enough. I can tell you that right now, for the amount of emotion and passion that I have for every single person that I work with, to want them to succeed. It's what drives me far more than the paycheck, 100 times over.
Yeah.
And it's hard because there's times where I want it so bad for people and they're just kind of like, eh. And I'm like pulling my hair out. That's why I'm bald. Cause it just, I'm like, come on, you can do it.
Yeah, I get it. It's like, it's very frustrating to see that someone stay in their rut and not pull themselves out when it could be really some simple solutions, simple changes. They'd feel so much better, even as little as 8 weeks later. They would feel the difference where they wouldn't even want to go back. If they went back, 100%. They would feel terrible. They would feel terrible if they went back to their old habits after 8 weeks. But you can't convince them of that. And it's sad that, they're just not ready. And it's just not condescending.
Bigger.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not condescending. It's like, for any of us who want to change something, the pain has to be big enough, or your desire, that the thing that you want ahead of that, the reason you want it, has to be big enough that you're willing to make changes. And we all have that in certain areas of our life, but when we're the one coaching, it's like, it's just painful to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. What is some of the things? So we're going to use a core. Okay. Well, let me ask you a couple of questions first.
Okay.
Do you have because I know for me, I do, I was out of shape in my late 30s, started getting into fitness, just got into fitness, got into pretty good shape, didn't have my nutrition locked in, got back out of shape again because I was working my butt off, but I was eating like crap. Right. Realized after like 6 years, like, wait a second, I'm the same guy I was 6 years ago, even though I've been working my butt off. I can do all this stuff physically. My physical ability improved dramatically, but I was still a fat ass. You know what I mean? I still was a schlub when it came to that. And now I'm a coach. I own a gym and I'm trying to tell people how to get in shape. I'm like, something's not right here. So then I had to get the nutrition in shape. So I went through a phase of fat to fit to fat. And now I've been fit for 5 years because I got the fitness and the nutrition locked in. And I'm living my best life at 50. I'll be 51 in a couple of weeks.
Oh, cool.
So my journey has not been a steady line in any direction. It's been up, it's been down, it's left and right and whatever. How's that work for you?
Well, like I said, I was really started experimenting in my 20s. I started lifting in college. Mm-hmm. That was the first time I really started kind of paying attention to something like that. It was just lifting though. But back then it was like, you remember what the late 80s were like with the kind of supplements we had. It was like,
oh my God, everything
was garbage.
Yeah.
It was garbage. It was weight gainers with basically they ground up some donuts and put in some really cheap whey protein and shook it together. And that was, whey protein. That was the weight gainers back then. Or just eating stuff, you're just lifting and you're 18, 19, 20, you can get away with it. Right. But then I started really thinking about the longevity portion of it. That's why I started experimenting with the fasting and the, with juice fasts, I should say. So it's a lot of sugar coming in, but you're not eating for a week. And or vegetarian diets, which again, trial and error. That was a big error. I learned a lot. I learned how to cook. I learned how to cook, and I learned what overtraining means and not feeding yourself appropriate to what you're demanding of your body.
Yep.
And I really did it. I mean, as well as it could be done. I was having black beans and rice every day. I was making my own almond milk. This is pre-almond milk. I would blend up dry almonds and put a little water and some honey and make my own almond milk to put on. I mean, I was doing everything I could to get enough protein, and it wasn't working. I was just shriveling up. I was getting sick. So when I started getting into more fitness and studying that, I was a recovering vegetarian. So that was probably my biggest, I would say, my downfall, my lowest point, health-wise.
Right.
Not metabolically unhealthy, other than I was just hungry, tired, overtrained all the time, and undernourished. And then, so other than that, no, I've never been I would never been out of shape or metabolically unhealthy.
Sure.
But it's always been that from that point on where I really started fine tuning,
figuring things out. Yeah.
Figuring things out. In my 40s, it was much more. I started low carb and eating a lot of just like 4 or 5 eggs a day, probably in my early 30s. So for about, late 20s, actually. So 20 years straight, just eggs and protein, and then started really refining the carb side of it, playing with fasting, like I said. So I've been tinkering for a long time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a long-winded answer, but it was really, it's a lot of tinkering with nutrition that kept me lean.
Okay. And as far as movement goes, like for me, this has been a 12 going on 13-year journey of getting to where I am today. I would say that it's been about 5 years that I finally got to a point where, okay, I'm good. Like, I'm not sick. The issues that I had are gone. The injuries and all the different things that I was dealing with through all of these different experiences are gone. I am free. I'm at a point where I am free to experiment, play, find out what I can do, try different things, live my life, and not have to worry about any of these other issues. All of that anxiety and all that self-confidence issues were gone because I finally found the right combination of things that worked. It took me 8 years to get there. I started with fitness, and when I was 38 years old, fitness for me took 4 or 5 years for me to be like, oh, I think I figured this out and I got it. But again, then it was nutrition. Then it was like a couple of years of why am I not getting where I want to go? I still have IBS. I still have urgent bowels. I still have a ton of excess fat. I still have all these things. I can do a Metcon. I can lift. I can run. I can do all these things like I could never do before, but I'm still not where I want to be. And then nutrition in 2018, I went carnivore, and that's been it ever since.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, the process, I think just from that, just what I'm trying to say is, helping people understand that it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
Like process that's been years of you trying to figure out what's going to work best for you and for your clients. And it's the same for me.
Right. And then it changes. You get older and you got to adjust. And I mean, there's elements where
that's
I think
part of what you that's what you talk about in the book, right? Is that it changes. Like it's.
Yeah. I mean, you just can't get away with as much. I think you have to be a little more strict. You have to be more sensitive to what's going on in your body. Things that work for you at 40 are not going to necessarily work for you at 50. The things I could eat when I was 40 and get away with, I wouldn't touch now because my stomach doesn't like them, or I just don't feel as good. I can't, or it affects my sleep, and the way I work out has changed. I'm doing a lot less real heavy lifting right now because I was just noticing tightness. I was losing some mobility, and I really hadn't focused on my mobility enough just over the last 20 years. I mean, it's kind of something that just didn't really address as well I should have.
What are you talking about? What guy doesn't focus on mobility? We all focus on mobility all the time.
Right. Right.
It's the number one thing. Who cares how much you lift?
Right. Yeah. But it took me having to get a little pain, in a hip here or like tightness there. And I'm like, I'm not going to end up being one of those guys, those older guys who walks through the gym like a robot. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't move, shuffle. And I'm like, nope. So I really started reassessing the way I move, I'm using a lot more body weight with full range of pistol squats, full range pull-ups, ring dips for stability, doing some animal flow stuff. I have some workouts I do that are more like moving on the ground, mobility work, just getting me back, hands and knees, and moving in ways I hadn't moved since I was a kid. And there's a reason why kids can move that way.
Yeah, right.
But it's challenging me. So it's really one of the my most challenging workouts are my mobility workouts. Using loop bands instead of so the big loop bands for resistance in certain movements, because I can work into a greater range or a greater point of failure without worrying about a heavy weight on my back or over my body, and really work into complete failure if I want to. And I just got a band here, or work through different ranges of motion, even limited ranges of motion, where I start fatiguing in the full range, but then a way I can push a little further, a little harder with a limited range and really burn that muscle out. So in a safe way, more sprinting, instead of longer cardio stuff, which I really found if I'm going to do a longer cardio, like zone 2 kind of stuff, I'm not going to run on the road. That's going to hurt. I'm going to get on a spin bike and focus on nasal breathing and deep diaphragmatic breathing. Or I'm going to swim in the summer maybe, but nothing where I have pounding, because my body just doesn't like it. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm a fan of rowing. I'm a fan of
rowing. Awesome.
I love rowing.
Yeah, I'm with you.
All day.
So it's and really having to understand what overtraining looks like. That I can't hammer everything 100% hard all the time. I really had to scale back and think about, well, if I'm doing this and this workout this week, I need to back off here, or allow a rest day, or have a more moderate workout. Make sure if my sleep's bad, maybe you take it easy. You don't, everything doesn't have to be hit at 110%, because it's going to have an effect. Recovery, basically. If I were to shorten all that, what I just said, focusing on recovery and thinking about that ahead of time, not just retroactively. What am I going to be able to recover from and function and be, same thing with fasting. I had to really think about how much fasting I was doing I used to love fasted workouts, fasting all day, in my 40s was fantastic. It felt good. I felt the adrenaline. I felt the cortisol. It was like this revving the engine and taking it to a level that, complete fatigue. It was amazing. It was a good feeling, but then it had a kickback as I got older. The recovery aspect wasn't there. So it's like, why am I just burning on my shoulder while I'm walking upstairs? Or why is my sleep disturbed? Why am I fatigued all the time? Well, because I'm over leveraging all these stressors. In addition to my career, dealing with family, they're all stressors. They're all, and so you have to manage those, even though they're good things. Because they're good stressors in your workout and with dietary stressors. It's like those things have to be managed, because you can overdo it, especially as we get older.
Absolutely.
And, and I noticed a big difference in that, like late 40s turning into 50. It's like, okay, this is going to take a little more management, a little more consciousness, self-awareness, put the ego aside, stop hitting everything with a hammer as hard as you can.
Let's talk about that. How does somebody know when they're going too hard? Whether it's in a workout or if it's over a period of time. Let's talk about in one workout. How do you know, okay, I probably should scale it back. This is too much.
Ooh, that's a good question, because I think there's a little bit of individuality with that. But I think if you're feeling pain, I know I have pushed myself to the point where I was seeing stars, lightheaded. I think my electrolytes were off. I'd over fasted, and so my magnesium and potassium were way low, and I start getting heart flutter, skip and beat. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And I think there were a couple of times I thought, okay, this is no big deal. This is fine. I'll just, no. And I would never let a client do that. I would never let a client do that, but I would take myself to that point. Of this is cool. I mean, a little nausea here and there, that's fine. I'm okay with that. If I'm fast, if I'm sprinting, or if I'm pushing something that's high intensity, fine. Because I know it's not going anywhere. I can manage it. But when you start getting heart flutters, or you start, the end is it takes too, or it's too long to recover, right? And then it's like, okay, That's not beneficial long term. That's not helpful. Your body's trying to tell you something. Get your ego out of the way and pay attention. You're missing something or you're overdoing something because that's not how your body's supposed to respond. I wouldn't let a client do that.
Yeah. 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 The mentality of no pain, no gain, while it has its merits on some level, as a mantra for every workout, is probably not the way to go.
No.
Yeah, absolutely.
No. And then over time, it's that recovery. We start feeling the burning, your sleep's disturbed, waking up maybe in the middle of the night with the cortisol stuff. That's just a sign of stress. And so you need to look at your whole life. You need to look at what's going on with career, family, anything else that's going on in relation to everything else you're doing with your fitness and your diet.
Right.
And say, okay, you know what? I've got deadlines to hit this week. My sleep's going to be disturbed and I'm going to be a little upset. You know what? Maybe I need to let off the gas on the workouts, move, get steps in, go something moderate. Don't, hit the throttle all the way down on this week.
Yep.
So I can just cruise and get the benefits of the blood flow and the stress relief without trying to pound it. But you'll notice, your body will just burn for no reason. Lactic acid is just there.
Well, I like what you're saying, because what you're talking about is kind of bringing what we talked about earlier in. It's right. It's habits. It's sustainability. So the habit is more important than the action. And what I mean by that is, you may have a period of your life where, like you said, you got deadlines at work. For the next 2 weeks, I'm working an extra hour and a half, 2 hours a day at the office. I got to change my schedule. I don't have the time to hit the gym like I normally would. I'm going to have more stress. I got to get up earlier. Like, all these things may be going on in your life. If you're focused through all of that on still hitting the gym and maxing out and killing yourself in the gym 5 days a week, you are going to come out of those 2 weeks an absolute zombie. You're probably going to have regressed in your progress and you're going to feel like crap. But if you accept where you are in that period of time, and you say the habit of fitness is more important than the actions I do while I do that habit, right? And you take the same amount of time if you need to, maybe cut it down, but just to have the habit of, I'm setting aside time, I'm going to show up, I'm going to do some mobility, I'm going to walk on the treadmill, I'm going to maybe do some lunges, and then I'm going to go home. Like, whatever it may be, but maintain the habit. So as long as you maintain the habit through that period of time, you don't have to restart a habit again,
right?
But you can just re-engage the intensity as needed.
Right.
It's a lot easier to carry that through that kind of period than to have to start all over again. And I think a lot of people are so extremist. It's all or nothing. Well, if I'm not going to go to if I can't work out the way I want to, I'll just wait for the next 2 weeks. And then you got 2 weeks of, you built a habit of not working out. So now you got to go and restart that habit of showing up at the gym every day. And it's a lot harder to do that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And you'll probably feel it in the way your body moves.
Oh my God. You'll feel like crap too. Yeah, absolutely. Man. Okay. So so one of the questions I had sent you earlier, before we started talking, was, what does the finish line look for you? Are you ever going to be done with fitness? And I think we know the answer to that is no. But how do you view fitness and its role in quality of life and longevity?
Well, it's essential. It does need to be adjusted and changed, modified for you as you age. I mean, if that's you're thinking about as you get older, I think it's important to find things you enjoy doing on a regular basis that just get you active. I think that becomes more important, because the intensity as we get older needs to come down. Not that you can't have intense workouts, but maybe a fewer of them. Maybe they don't last as long. It's great to have, I think, including sprinting for as long as you can in a safe way. That's it's just an incredible thing to help your body kind of surge energy and move quickly.
Yeah. And let me interject there, because I think when people hear sprinting, they think getting on a track and running. But I want to make it clear that there's a billion different ways to sprint. You can sprint on a rower, you can sprint on a bike, you can sprint on an elliptical. Like sprinting is moving your body fast and intensely for a short period of time and then resting. That's what it's 5, 10, 20 seconds and you're done. And then you take a breath. But it's doing almost as much as you possibly can in a short period of time. And it's like getting that balloon bigger so you can fill more in that balloon so you have more to use. We talk about metabolism or energy kind of thing. So yeah, it doesn't have to just be running. For people that are like, well, I can't run. Well, get on a bike.
Right.
You can sprint on a bike. It probably sucks more sprinting on a bike than it does sprinting on the track.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. It's fine to modality, but it's about the explosiveness. It's about putting out that much energy at one time, and you do it, as you say, in a safe way that fits for your body and it's and whatever restrictions you may have if you have them. But those shorter moments. You manage the recovery, but I think that's why it's more important to find something that you enjoy doing that's a moderate level of activity, that you wouldn't mind getting out and doing it several times a week or almost every day, just to stay moving, just to keep moving and to get your blood flowing and get outside and be active. Because as soon as you stop moving, oh my gosh, that's especially as your age, it's like you're not just standing still, you're going backwards.
100%, dude. 100%.
Yeah. And no one, and why? And I think the couch, the easy chair, the retirement, I mean, not just in the mind, it definitely affects the mind. If you don't have a goal, if you don't have things that you enjoy going out doing, you have a desire to achieve or have an impact on, that's going to affect your mind. It's going to affect your soul. Just the reason you get out of bed in the morning. But as soon as you relegate yourself to spending most of your time on the couch with the clicker, I mean, that's a slow death. Right there. There's time for that as you recover, but it's like you're spending days like that because you're retired, you're not working as much or at all, and you're not sure what to do with yourself. And there's just not, my goodness, find something you enjoy and get outside and do it. Otherwise, you're just bringing yourself closer to disease at an exponential rate. There's got to be something you enjoy to get out and do to keep you moving and happy. And I mean, there's so much tied to our mental state that is a direct result of movement and activity and enjoying what we're doing in the process, to keep those. I mean, if you want to call them the happy hormones, but it's like, it's just that it's really keeping you having a desire to be alive. Right. It's creating a reason to keep going. And we all need that. We all need that. As soon as you give up that.
Yeah, I think that might be, one of the other things, the differences between men and women is, both men and women work, they have careers. But I think from what I've seen, when men retire, they end their career, they have a much harder time transitioning.
Yeah.
They don't connect to family and things like that the same way as women do. So women can retire, but then they still have their family to fall back on as being important. They have a role there. Men do too, but we often have put so much of our identity into our career,
right,
that now we don't have a why. We don't have that motivating thing. We don't have that something that keeps us going, that we want to prove ourselves or show that we can do or have a status. And it's a lot of status stuff with men too. So I think, yeah, absolutely. If you're a guy listening to this and you're at that point where maybe you're close to retirement, or you've already retired, or that point where you're, like you said, at the pinnacle, and you're looking like what's coming next, start thinking about, where do I want to be? What do I want to do? What will motivate me when this phase is done? Because you've got to have something you've got to have another thing after this. You're not dead. So what are you going to do? Like, you don't want to just hang around for 20 years until you die. So absolutely. It's super important. Cool, man. So where can people find you? Where can people get the book? And when are you coming on again? No, we'll talk about when you're coming on again some other time.
Well, I'm most active on Instagram right now. Which is Zane Griggs Fitness. And then my website, zanegriggs.com, if you're looking for my other, whether it's a YouTube or a podcast or Facebook, if that's a better way for you to connect with me, then those are all the links to those are all on zanegriggs.com. So that's a real simple way to find where you want to look me up. The book's on Amazon. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The book's on Amazon right now, print copy. I'm working on the ebook, and then coming up, Dr. Barry and I are going to be doing an Audible together. We're going to be reading different parts, maybe a little banter, a little extra bonus material in there. But we're going to make it fun. as much as we can.
Right.
But the paperback's available on Amazon right now. So
Fantastic. Do you have programs that people can look at? All that stuff's on your website. If you have any like training programs, or do you just do online stuff? You do in-person stuff still?
yeah, no, I don't really have a lot of. I try to personalize most of what I do based on their needs and they're where they are personally. And so I don't have like a set workout but I do, I have some workout videos on YouTube where I show samples of what I do with the bands, just to give people alternatives, things they can do at home. So home workouts or in a park or whatever, travel workouts, those kind of things. So they could take those and make them work for them.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. All right. What's one last thing you want to leave with everybody? Something to take home.
Oh man. I think it's what we just talked about. I know we just said it, but it's like, get a vision for your life going forward. Like when my wife and we hit 50, it was like, okay, what do we want the next 20 years to look like? Both career-wise, personally, have a vision for your life and plan for it. You are not, until you can't fog a mirror, right? You're not done yet. And make movement and fitness a part of it so you can sustain that, but find something that drives you, find something that gives you a reason to get up in the morning, that's a passion, something you want to pursue or tell the world about, promote, or just investing in your family. Just find something that gets you out of bed, and then incorporate your health, your fitness as a means to continue to carry that out.
That's awesome. Fantastic, man. Thanks a lot for being on. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.